To order. Would you please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for coming out on this wonderful evening. Except for the little downpour we had half an hour ago, it was all real nice. But anyway, the first item on our business will be, or next item actually, is our weekly commission reports. And Commissioner Pinnell, did you have a report tonight?
Just to say that I'll be participating in the United Way Day of Caring tomorrow, doing a project at 6th Street Park. So we'll be working on that as much as we can tomorrow morning.
Olson.
Mason Transit Authority Board meeting tomorrow, and that's all I have this week.
And looks like I will be on the radio, KMAS, Wednesday morning at 8:15 sharp to solve all of the world's problems. So, looking forward, or some of them anyway. And that's all I'll be doing, I guess, this week concerning the city business, other than if there needs to be a state of emergency called or something like that, but probably not. Hopefully not, anyway. All right, next item is general public comment. We have two items in the evening when we have general public comment, and so if you would please sign your name and address in, we'd love to hear from the public tonight. Okay, we have, it looks like two people signed up. And Mr. Davis, did you want to speak at this time?
Yes, please.
Okay, you have 3 wonderful minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. I attended a Mason County briefing today, and to my surprise, I first learned, the first that I've learned about a $3.7 million community development block grant to build 8 apartments for the homeless. 4 one-bedroom apartments, 4 two-bedroom apartments for $3.7 million. That's a lot of money for 8 apartments. It includes nothing, and I know the city doesn't have too much to do with this. This is another organization, and you put your stamp on it, and I realize that, so I don't want to come across like that's the onus is on the city. What I do want to communicate to you is that $3.7 million for 8 units is outrageous on any level. A more efficient use of that money could have been found, and it could have been found if we had a community task force on this issue. And it's one of the reasons that I would like to have a community task force, because this evidently started rolling this particular proposal a couple of years ago. And had we had a community task force, we could have advised how best to use this money with the commissioner's approval, of course. And we might have been able to steer this money into a project that would accommodate many more people. For instance, there's an apartment complex on Adams Street, I believe it is, 20 units for sale for $1.7 million or $1.5 million thereabouts, about half the cost of what's going to be built. So I would, again, this proposal is already out of the barn, so it's going to be built. There's no sense crying over spilt milk, but we can learn from this experience. If we had a community task force, we could have found a better use for this money, and I hope you will reconsider or consider again establishing one for poverty and homeless in Shelton. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Tracy, did you want to come?
Tracy Moore, 611 West Birch Street. And I would also be in favor of Tom's proposal to form a community task force regarding the problems of homeless and poverty in Shelton. The other thing I want to talk about tonight is thank you, Commissioner Pennell, because I do want to remind everyone tomorrow is United Way's Day of Caring. There will be close to 200 people throughout our county doing good things, doing projects at 20 sites. You will see lots of people around, hopefully outside their raincoats and jade-colored T-shirts. So applaud them all and be thankful for the many citizens who are willing to give. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Have my fellow commissioners had time to review the material? If you have, then could we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda. Vouchers numbered 81119 through 81223 in the amount of $1,412,679.39. Payroll warrants numbered 69354 through 69544 in the amount of $639,651.09. Commission meeting minutes from study session of May 13th, 2013, business meeting of May 20th, 2013, study session of May 28th, 2013, and business meeting of June 3rd, 2013. Target Zero Task Force project and manager duties. Authorize Chief Eklund and the mayor to sign the agreement. Ordinance number 1828-0513, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, adding a new chapter 8.70 to the Shelton Municipal Code relating to public nuisances. Ordinance number 1831-0613, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, adding chapter Title IX to the Shelton Municipal Code relating to public nudity.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Item number F is old business, and under old business, we'll be having a briefing by our Community and Economic Development Director, Steve Goins, and it's concerning an ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is an item coming back to you. As you may recall, we discussed this in April. This is one of 5 recommendations that was forwarded by the SAVOR Committee, all identified as a way to try to encourage new businesses in the downtown, to revitalize the downtown, and give an opportunity for those businesses a chance to flourish. The initial request, and I included, I believe, the letter in your packet that described the 5 recommendations, was to basically create a moratorium for signage within the downtown and commercial residential valley zoning districts for new businesses for 180 days. We discussed this at our meeting, and there was a number of comments generated from that. This proposal you have before you today is an attempt to reconcile those comments with the request from SAVOR. I should add that in looking at our ordinance, it seemed more prudent to apply this over the entire city rather than to identify a certain zoning district that would be benefiting from whatever this criteria is you adopt. So whatever we change, if we change any element of our zoning code or our sign code, would apply citywide. The proposal that's before you today basically is to expand on what is already allowed temporary signage for new businesses. There's a provision in our code that allows certain types of signage, such as grand opening signs, this type of thing, for 15 days. This would expand on that for new businesses and allow them to place their new business signage out on the business for 90 days without a requirement for a building permit. You need, I should say, you need to go through a approval process, but there's no fee required to place that signage. We just simply want to review what you're proposing. And basically what we'd be looking at in this case is the signage would need to be placed on the premises where the business is located. You couldn't have off-premises signs. You couldn't place a sign down on the highway, for example, saying, "Come see us," down on Railroad. The sign wouldn't be allowed to project into the right-of-way. You'd need to mount it to the wall securely and make sure that you're not impeding traffic or pedestrians. And we added a provision that would allow you to expand on the area of signage you're allowed, and that would be the third criteria that we'd be reviewing. Again, with the thought that this would, instead of extending the temporary permit allowance for 180 days, as was recommended, staff's approach was to try to accommodate sort of a compromise and make that for 90 days, and that's what you see in the draft before you today. There was a letter directed to the commission from Heidi McCutcheon, the executive director of the chamber, and you may have received a copy of that. They wanted to express some justification for the proposal as it was crafted, and essentially the discussion was the benefits or the strategy behind including the signage for the 180 days, and some of the discussion about requiring those signs to be placed inside the storefront, why they thought that wasn't a good approach to take in this case, and again underscoring that they thought this was a real benefit to the district in trying to fill out some of the vacant storefronts and get businesses established. I think Heidi's here today, and she'll likely want to take the time to address the commission on this item as well. At this point, we have no direction in terms of what the next steps are. We're entertaining comments and further suggestions from the commission on this item.
Heidi, would you like to speak now to this issue, or do you want to wait? Or we have your letter in front of us here, so I don't know if you wanted to.
I can speak now, or I can wait for the conversation.
Because we're going to talk about it, I guess, so. Well, let's just, is there any questions or comments concerning this? Commissioner Pinelli?
Yeah, I think it's a nice compromise. We talked about it at length earlier, and my thinking then, and I still continue to kind of hold this idea that a sign is a vital part of a business plan. And if you can buy us a decent sign for $200, I'm thinking that would need to be part of your plan to go into business. I understand the idea of entrepreneurs going in and not necessarily being ready to open a full-fledged business, but I kind of question that too. Do we want folks who are rotating through these empty buildings every couple of months, or do we want folks who are going to be in there for the long haul? So, I continue to think that as a business person, things like signage and taxes and all those kinds of things are things you need to consider and think about before you take the step of opening up a business. With that being said, I think if we can use a 90-day period to sort of encourage folks, I guess I would be okay with that. Again, with the caveat that we want to encourage folks who are there for the long haul and people that are thinking enough ahead to not be in a temporary position for any longer than they have to be. So,
Question of, are sandwich signs allowed? You didn't mention that when you said projecting signs.
The
Sandwich board type?
The sign code has a provision for sandwich board types of signs. You basically get an annual permit, and you can place those in certain locations that are approved. And I think the fee for that is around $25 or $30.
So
and that's already in place now.
Okay, so they would be part of this then?
I didn't
Allowed.
envision this being added on to that. If someone wanted to advertise with a sandwich board, basically they can do that through that $30 permit for an entire year.
right.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Pennell. I think 90 days is a good compromise for something that we're not quite sure of how it's going to work anyway, and I would have the suggestion that we possibly revisit this in a year or some time period to see how it's working with the business owners and the city staff.
I do like the provision in the letter to Heidi that talks about having some resources available to these folks to let them know where they can go to get a sign, for example. So I would recommend that be done as well.
Well, no shock to anyone. I'm probably in favor of giving any business as much opportunity to advertise their business and to try and get started in a business without major restrictions or whatever. I mean, somebody told me today they walked down and saw like 6 or 7 vacant storefronts, and I know that sometimes starting businesses don't have a lot of extra money to buy signs, and so I would probably favor the 120 days. That was the request that was made over 2 years ago, I think, to this commission. And we're now getting around to even giving 90 days, so I don't know why it takes 2 years. But I would probably be in favor of the 120 days. I would probably also definitely be in favor of allowing a sign outside of a storefront window. Why, do that, I suppose. So I'm leaning in forward of, favoring, encouraging entrepreneurs to open businesses with as little, restrictions and regulations on it. But obviously, this is the democratic process, and if we have 2 commissioners that are for something, then that will be what we probably decide upon, unless one of them chooses to, after Heidi speaks to us, go to 120 days or whatever. In this provision, is the sign have to be inside the storefront, the temporary sign, behind a window?
No, the provision doesn't speak to that specifically, although it brings into question what provisions would that sign be approved under. For example, typically the city doesn't allow businesses to place signage on their rooftop. Would you want those kind of provisions included in this proposal, or do you want to limit them in the same manner that current signs are limited in terms of location? We were silent on requiring them to be inside the storefront. I think generally staff agreed that was probably not the best approach to, on one hand, seem to have some flexibility, but then require it to be inside the storefront.
But that's not in there.
That's correct.
Well, we've kind of heard our opinions. Heidi, did you want to speak to this at all more than what your letter said, or?
Sure.
Okay.
So Heidi McCutcheon, 130 East Woodland Drive. I don't think it's necessary to read the entire letter, but just to kind of hit on some of the points. And to first off, thank you for the opportunity to continue to partner with the City of Shelton in improving our business climate and to incentivize and attract new business development. So some of the concerns that were raised in the original meeting, we didn't arbitrarily come up with a 180-day time period for the sign ordinances, but rather referred to some studies which showed that 6 months is typically the deciding point as to whether or not move forward and brave the odds or to cut their losses and fold, as by that time sales trends are established. 6 months is typically the benchmark when it comes to deciding if there are any improvements in terms of sales, especially when there's limited capital, which many of our small business owners, especially new business owners, have within the City of Shelton business community. So obviously we don't want our businesses to have a cardboard sign up for the duration of this, but rather expect that there would be some parameters as to what types of materials, etc. One of the things that we did hit upon was, to get a professional vinyl sign that would be made, you can get for less than $200. And when you have so many expenses, even with upgrades, etc., if it came down to somebody deciding if they wanted to paint the interior of the business versus getting a sign in 3 months, I would just really encourage you guys to look at the 180 days. And again, remember, this isn't just an arbitrary number that we came up with, but rather studies are showing that this could be a good way for, or the perfect timing for a business owner to further invest in their business. So, if at 90 days you could have some people that are doing well and are able to put up a permanent sign, that's really nice. But for the luck of the draw, I would encourage you to stick with that 180 and give the best possible chances to that business owner. So, any
All right.
questions?
Any questions? We read your letter.
Thank you. And again, I do thank you guys for continuing to coordinate efforts with the chamber. We do appreciate that.
All right. I had lunch today with Steve Sims, and he told me the story of being in his woodshed with his boy, and he started a business, because his boy was playing baseball or something. He thought, well, I'm gonna make it so that the shock on this baseball bat isn't really extremely hard on his hands, and so he invented this anti-vibration thing, and he put it in his kid's baseball bat in his shed out in Lake Limerick. And he developed into one of our multi-million-dollar businesses here in Shelton, one major success story. And I was just kind of curious if he had wanted to open up a little shop downtown Shelton to start with, if it would have really been beneficial to Shelton to require him a more sophisticated sign when he started. So I'm kind of a freedom guy on that one, and I think that there's good to have signs and whatnot and proper signs and everything, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot bigger battles in this city that we should probably be spending our time fighting. That's my opinion again, but it looks like we probably have a consensus to just do it at 90 days. Is that what we have a consensus then? I don't think we vote on it. You want recommendation to you, so I think 90 days better than nothing.
The other provisions that are in the draft ordinance, I can bring that forward next week for a first reading.
Yeah, I think the sign should conform with the standards certainly that are in place, as far as materials and that stuff, even if they are just temporary. And I'm comfortable with the 90 days. I think we can, review it periodically. Like I said, I'm not opposed to extending it if it looks like that, research from the chamber shows that it is something that needs to be done. But I think to start with 90 days is a good compromise.
Is there going to be public comment on that issue?
I think we already decided in your favor. I think we're going with 90 days. Did you want 0 days or 15 days? You can come and speak to this. You want to speak now?
Yeah.
Come and sign in right here, sir.
Thank you much for the opportunity to speak. I'm Forrest Cooper from 409 Railroad, and this is kind of a touchy subject with me. I'd like to say that I'm also the founder of the Shelton Neon Project, which is coordinated efforts with the Mason County Historical Society to restore numerous signs and to promote historic quality signage for our downtown. And I'd like to say that giving somebody the opportunity to go from our standard 15 days on a temporary signage up is a direct insult to every volunteer that's helped restore the signs here in town. We volunteer all of our time to try and make this town a better, more pleasing and cohesive downtown historic area. And to want to promote temporary signage, I don't think you guys realize that 180 days, 90 days even, those signs will fade. Who's going to want to start a business up in a space that has a temporary signage next to us? This is going to be counterproductive to what is actually in place now, and I'm highly against it on behalf of the Shelton Neon Project. We have been encouraging some other businesses to put up quality signs, and one, for instance, is the Garage Sale Maniacs on Coda. They just put up a sign. It's a $20,000 sign. We, with our coordinated efforts with them, they were able to erect that sign for under $4,000. Now that's a big sign. You can put up a good quality sign for about $300 to $500 right now that would fit into the historic requirements. and would also make our downtown a better place. The reason I brought up Garage Sale Maniacs is because they actually reached their year-end quota by the end of April, all in result of their sign. Now, if it wasn't for a volunteer group like us to step in and help these folks, they wouldn't have put one up, because they came to us because they had no artistic or signage abilities and ideas. And so that's why the Neon Project is here, and why we're helping encourage not neon signs in general, but historic style signage. Signs that are hand-carved, utilize different shapes, complex shapes, flag-mounted, something that's more historic and appropriate for our downtown, because things develop uptown, and as Hall Equities goes in, we start getting stuff up there, our historic downtown is going to be more important than ever before, because it's going to go one of two ways. It's either going to die or it's going to flourish. And the only way it's going to flourish is if we encourage viable business to be down here, and we encourage good quality signage. I mean, if I was a new business owner coming in here, I was 5 years ago, and I have a nice quality sign, but if I was now, and I came in and I had a good business plan and I set everything up, and next to me somebody came in with a horrible business plan, and they're more interested in painting the inside of their building than they are about making sure the outside looks presentable, and they just hang a banner up there next to what I'm trying to do, that's not going to help my business. I'm highly against it, so thank you. I'd like to keep it at the 15 days.
Thank you. All right. So what does the commission want to do? Would we hanging in there on the 90 days?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Forrest. I think it's a good thing to maintain that integrity. This is a case of a compromise. And as Commissioner Olson said, we can revisit this. I think we owe it to the committee who spent a lot of time looking at this to give them an opportunity to prove us wrong, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Well, my question would be,
No, we don't.
Yeah.
there's no reason for a compromise.
So there is always reason for compromise in my book. So I think we can move forward with the 90 days and give it a try and see how it works.
It's an insult.
Okay, moving right along. Does staff have enough to move forward on that?
I believe so.
Thank you very much. All right, next is we have Kathy Byerly is going to give us a presentation concerning a resolution.
Yes, it's time for that annual update to the city fee schedule. I'm bringing forward a Resolution 1049-0613 with Attachment A and Exhibits A through G of a proposed new fee schedule. Now, included, we do these fee schedules each year just to review the fees. Each department gets their pieces, and they look at them and determine whether they're still applicable and whether they need to be increased or decreased or changed in some manner. So they all went out. We only actually have a few, really, that changed. And in your packet there's a little recap sheet on top of just the ones that changed. And behind it is the documents of the full fee schedule with everything included. And as you can see on that recap sheet, the Civic Center rental fees are going to change. They were originally flat amounts for 2-hour increments, and each one of them, 1 meeting room, 2 meeting rooms, 3, and then the main meeting room, have been changed to just a per-hour fee. So you can see that it used to be 0 to 2 hours is $30, now it's $15 an hour. So if it's only 1 hour, they only pay $15, 2 hours, $30, and on up the scale. So the rates have changed a bit. So that's the first change, which is the number of changes, but it's the fees to the Civic Center rental. And Mark Ziegler is here in case you have any questions on it. Each of the department heads are here in case you have questions on these fee changes.
So these are being changed subject to the commissioner's authority.
Yes, these are proposed changes that are included.
What prompted the decrease?
Pardon?
Why are you lowering?
I don't think they're lowering.
Not necessarily lowering. The
Yeah.
only thing we're changing is the ability for folks to rent below the minimum of 2 hours. So we had a 2-hour minimum. It's much easier. I found that it's easier to just have a standard 1 hour rental or a rental by the hour rather than 2 hour increments. So now somebody can come in and rent it by the hour. They know if they want it for 3 hours at the single room, it's $15 per hour rather than if they're not using it for that extra 4 hours or that extra hour, which would be our 4 hour rate, they don't have to pay for that. Not to mention, it also, in the main room, when we have large events, wedding receptions, things like that, we had an all-day rate, anything over 8 hours, essentially. It gives us the ability to recover more of those costs that happen when there's large events in there, because they're the ones that really eat up staff time, cleaning, custodial, setting the rooms, getting them broken down the next day and things like that. So that's where we're seeing most of the changes, that that hourly rate is going to affect those events that are longer duration, over 6 hours up to 12 hours in the main room here. So if you see the single room, if somebody rents it for 2 hours, they're paying the same amount. They're just paying for it they're paying $15 for the 2 hours rather than $30 for that.
Makes it easier for you to control it a little.
Makes it easier as well as people to actually look at the rate schedule and say, okay, here's the hourly rate, rather than where do I fall into the schedule.
All right, any other questions, comments?
Okay.
It didn't look like you were raising things too much. I didn't see too many raises in there.
It probably just depends which category you fall into.
Huh?
It depends which category you fall into.
Oh, yes, well, I fall into the good category.
Of course.
Yes.
Okay, the next section is under the Public Works Department fees and charges. The basic access right-of-way permit, that has changed, what with the ordinances going in place, where there used to be just a $75 fee plus applicable civil review and inspection fees. Now that's been broken down into a number of different components. Short-term maintenance permit's $15, temporary construction permit would be $75 plus inspection fees. Fixture and encroachment permit, $30 plus a $15 renewal fee. Heavy use permits, $100 application fee plus inspection fees, and then the rental of barricades and signs, which are $5. And there's a little, and includes 2 barricade signs for up to 1 week. And in addition to that, there was some changes to the equipment rentals. Most of these changes, like the boom truck, the bucket truck, the CSI water truck, small dump truck, Mack truck, garbage truck, the vacuum truck, and the box paver, basically it just added in operator costs. It's pretty much the same rate per hour plus operator costs. It wasn't clear on the past schedule that there would be operator costs along with these pieces of equipment. And then there was 2 new pieces of equipment that have been added to the list. One is the roll-off truck and the other is a loader. The roll-off truck is $65 per hour plus operator costs, and the loader is $46 per hour. It doesn't say per hour here, but it's per hour. To write that one in. And the public, Greg's here, if you have any questions on these public work fee changes.
Looks like you've done your homework. Yes, Mr. O'Leary.
Greg, is these fees for the equipment, is that to help us with our cooperating agreement with Mason County?
It certainly will. Greg Clark, Public Works Director. It certainly will help us with that agreement, because we have an interlocal agreement kind of in process to recover costs if we lend equipment out. Specifically here, the operator costs are key, because in the last go-around, the operators weren't listed, and certain pieces of equipment, we want to make sure operators are required to go out with the equipment so that we sure it's run properly and we don't have damage to the equipment and downtime getting it repaired. So I had John Deacon go through and with Ken, and they identified the key pieces of equipment, and we wanted that. And you'll notice on 2 of the pieces of equipment, the Vector truck and the box paver, that we actually have 2 operators that are required to make sure that that equipment runs properly. But yes, Dave, it will dovetail very nicely with the Mason County agreement, and so that's the reason.
All right. Any more questions or comments?
Okay, so these are the new fee schedule changes that are proposed, but in addition to that, Exhibit G, the very last one, that is the 2009 International Building Code, square foot construction cost. That's been updated. This is the most recent document, so we've just updated that in this fee schedule. The International Code Council, the rates get updated about every 6 months in this fee, in this code, building code, but they update the actual chart, what do you call that? Had it here somewhere. Just every 3 years. That's why it says 2009, because it just gets updated every 3 years, but the rates within it are updated every 6 months. So whenever we do a rate increase, we just revise that sheet, put in the most current one. And that's all there is that changed in this proposed fee schedule. So if there aren't any more questions on this, staff would recommend that Resolution 1049-0613 be placed on the consent agenda for June 24th.
I believe I can concur with that. So why don't we do that? Follow staff's recommendation on that. That'll be on the consent agenda again for June 24th, 2013. Thank you very much, Kathy.
You're welcome.
All right. Next is a briefing by Mike Michael concerning another resolution. Sir.
Mayor, excuse me, Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. Yes, this is actually a loan agreement that requires us to pass a resolution. This evening, I'm going to make this fairly quickly because I'm actually going to ask this be moved on to old business next week so that we can talk again about it as a follow-on to our discussion on the Canyon Creek Planning Project, which I will be bringing back the final draft report next week for your perusal and action on, hopefully. Some time ago, in fact, approaching a year ago, staff applied for this loan as a proactive measure to assure that we had design funds for whatever might come out of the Canyon Creek Planning Project in particular. The request was $350,000 based on the comp plan identified level of expense for the Canyon Creek improvements. Ecology awarded those funds late last year, and we've been kind of sitting on this waiting for the results out of the planning project. Ecology's to the point where they want to get these closed out before the end of the biennium, so as I said, bringing this forward this evening to get it on the radar so that we can complete discussion of it next week when staff will be ready to bring forward a recommendation on the disposition of this loan. You'll see from the briefing report here that we've got some wide open options. We can accept the loan, not draw any money, and then rescind the loan at that time, some point down the road. We can choose not to take the loan now, or if there's a desire, we can choose to take this loan and use it for design of portions coming out of the Canyon Creek study. As I said again, staff will be formalizing our recommendation to the commission for next week's meeting, and believe likely that it will be a recommendation to not accept this loan at this time and just use the capital reserves that are in the stormwater facility, or fund, excuse me.
Wow. That's shocking, but good news. Questions and comments? I had a question. So if we did accept this loan, how much of that would go directly towards the Canyon Creek project? Was it, because I kind of thought I heard something about that maybe some would go towards something else?
The structure of the request was specific for projects coming out of this pre-design effort that we were working on. So any of this money that we did take would have to be used to finalize or move forward at least designs that come out of the report that we will be, that we did present to the commission several weeks ago and that we'll be bringing back in front of you next week.
Okay. So did that answer my question?
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I probably didn't quite understand. Of the $350,000, if we borrow this money, would all $350,000 go directly towards the Canyon Creek flooding project?
Yes, its intent is for that design, not that we have to use that much money, but up to that amount is available under this loan agreement to facilitate and complete design efforts for those projects.
Okay. That answered my question. Thank you. Any other questions?
Just a comment, when we discussed this earlier, my concern then and continues to be that we really, since this is just for design, it really doesn't give us time to see how the fix that we are just in the middle of is working before we have to commit to this money, and it is loan money, it's not grant. So at this point, I'm kind of thinking along with you that this is one that we need to say thank you but no thanks, and give ourselves time to see how the fix that we are already paying for is going to work.
Right. Based on some preliminary discussions with finance this morning, it appears that the quick turnaround projects that are being recommended out of the drainage plan, the basin plan, we should be able to fund those with the reserves that are in the stormwater utility now. And based on that and that comment of needing to see how these projects are going to work and what else may need to be done, I agree. It financially for stormwater, it does not make sense at this time, it appears. But again, we'll be bringing back a formal recommendation on it next week as part of a 2-item briefing back to back. So.
All right. Any more comments, questions? And we'll see it under old business at our next meeting. Very good. Okay, that leaves us with an administration report. Mr. O'Leary.
I'm going to go ahead and take most of this, and then you help me if I get something wrong.
Perfect.
Okay. We have a kind of an interesting issue that's arising on the Dayton Airport Road Water Project. There is what we agreed to earlier on was to to set up a latecomers agreement with the State Patrol. So the state putting up money in order to build a water line out to their facility on Dayton Airport Road. When other people come along and connect, gives the state an opportunity to recoup at least some portion of those dollars that they fronted to go out. We did the same thing with the P83 when we extended water out Johns Prairie Road recently. The challenge we've got is that you really can't put together a latecomers agreement until you know what your costs are. And we won't know what the costs are until, at least mid-July. And we really need to, because the end of the biennium for the state is June 30th, and just within 2 weeks. So what's happened within the state is that the state finance people have said, you don't have any money to spend in the next biennium, and so when the June 30th comes, this project is over. The State Patrol is saying, well, wait a minute, there's $1 million, $2 million in latecomers that are potentially coming to the state after that, and of course, they said, well, that's just not in the budget, so we don't care. Well, I'm sure they care, but we can't do anything about it. We're done with the project. So the State Patrol has come to us and asked if we would front the dollars for this project, which is $15,000, $20,000, something in that scale, and then we would be paid back plus interest out of latecomer connections. So when people come in and they do start hooking up, which is going to be another year or two at least until that happens. But, so they've asked us to help them to get over the hump that they've got with their own budget process. So that's the request. There's no need for you to make this decision tonight. Probably we may need to, we're going to need to get legal on this, obviously. But it is a good faith effort for us to help our partners that have been with us for the long haul on this project. So it's probably the right thing to do rather than try to get the state to fix its problems. So anyhow, it's not, in the scope of the whole project, it's not a lot of money, but it is a lot of money. So at the same time. So anyway, that's a report. Now, Mike, did I leave anything out?
Other than the fact that our staff with State Patrol staff have been working for about 3 months now trying to come up with options to get us over this hump. There's a small cost to close out the project. You know, we're about ready to give them physical completion probably later this week, and we've got the retainage release process and all of that. So there's a little bit of administrative costs there as well that we were going to have to try and cover. We've gone back through State Patrol to OFM a half a dozen times with ideas, and OFM has shot every one of them down. And so this was kind of a last resort to forestall having to use monies that they may need for emergency replacement of air conditioning units and things like that. That really is the only other option that's left available to them. Mm-hmm. Given the interest in hooking up to the water line, I brought this forward because, again, I believe it's a good effort with our partners that have been very good to us, and we're not looking at a significant amount of time for a fairly small amount of money, relatively speaking. So,
all right. We'll talk more about this, I guess, and it sounds good at this point. There's another opportunity for general public comment. Anyone else would like to speak? Now would be the time. If not, yes, Ms. Moore.
This is related to the Canyon Creek project, and last week I believe Mike did a presentation at the library about the proposed plan, and I would just really like to compliment you. During the time that I was there, there were probably maybe 7 of us that came in at different times, and it was kind of amusing because as each person came in, they asked him the exact same questions, made the exact same comments, and Mike was very professional, very courteous. I think it was an excellent showing. As far as the actual plans, I'm amazed that it seems to be a great solution with, maybe a few questions, but I just think it was a really positive experience and a good thing for the city and a good face. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Administration final touches. All right, I read the sheet. So our next meeting will be Monday, June 24th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This meeting is adjourned.